In today's Maelstrom of lore,
like I said to Luca, like Mephiston versus Darth Vader.
Still Darth Vader.
As well as
That's basically what the Asgardians do. We're gods, and it says they look down on everybody else.
What? Like it's the same with Superman. He's from Krypton. What are they called?
Kryptonians?
They're Kryptonians. Okay.
Oh, yeah, what about Superman versus a Space Marine librarian?
and also
Yeah, because generally speaking, I think when you look back at that, like if you're playing the Marines the way you're supposed to play them, like you're making smart tactical choices, you don't lose Marines. They can take on way more than their number.
this is the Maelstrom of lore.
MiniWarGamer Dave here from MiniWarGaming.com. Welcome, Wargamers, to the Maelstrom of Lore. In this segment, we'll be talking about Galactic Showdown, which is going to pit up another IP against Warhammer 40k. In this case, we'll start it off with Star Wars, and specifically what comes to mind is the video that Major Kill did, the one between Darth Vader and a Psyker space marine. Do you guys see that video?
Yep.
Yeah, that video was
Pretty
insane.
awesome.
So I think we just start right there. Let's go Star Wars and 40k, and let's do a Jedi Knight versus a Psyker Space Marine. Who wins?
Versus like a Space Marine librarian?
Yeah.
Oh, it's over. Instant.
Hold on.
Jedi Knight.
That's an instant
Yeah.
over in your mind?
Yeah.
If it's
instantly
just a
over?
base, like just a Jedi Knight. Jedi Knights are like kind of
No,
basic.
Darth Vader.
Oh, Darth Vader would eat like. Darth
Yeah,
Vader
right.
for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just a Jedi
depends-
Knight. It's Darth Vader.
Oh, I thought we were talking just a Jedi Knight.
You said Jedi Knight, yeah.
You're right. I did say that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was going back to the Major Kill video. That's how good it was. Okay, so like a Jedi Knight, isn't Darth Vader just
No,
a
he's
really
a-
good Jedi
he's a
Knight?
We don't have enough time.
No, he was
like beyond
never
master.
able to be a master. Remember?
Not,
that was
the thing.
Oh no!
But his,
Yeah,
his,
can't
believe you. Remember, you can't be a
his strength.
I don't want to
was-
be involved in this episode.
Darth Vader's quite powerful.
So he's pretty powerful, but I mean, like, so if you get into it, he is kind of stifled by the suit that he's in.
Yes, of
so.
course. Yeah, that's true.
Well, you seem to have opposite views. Like, you can't just say he's more powerful. Like, why? Why is he more powerful?
I mean, Vader might put up a good fight against the Space Marine librarian, but it's still a Space Marine librarian.
Why? But why? You can't just say that.
Yeah, we have to bring it back for a second. We have to bring it back because for a dude like me who casually dives into the IP on both sides,
Yeah.
okay, for Star Wars specifically, in their power scale, how does that work? What makes Darth Vader so powerful that is beyond powerful more than all the other powerful dudes?
I could just end the conversation with actual evidence we've seen on film.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've seen Luke Skywalker, who's supposed to be super powered, like a really strong Jedi, lose an arm, scream like a baby, and fall down a hole. And we've seen plenty of just regular.
He was still in training at that point.
Blow off limbs and just keep on going like nothing's happening.
It's
So
more-
now you make him a Psyker, like it's Zariel or somebody. The Jedi's just done.
I think it wouldn't even come to close quarters combat, though. I think like Vader, he would just like crush him. It's like
Do you think Vader would be able to crush a librarian, though? Because I think the librarian would be like, no, I'm going to...
It depends. The expanded universes have him pulling deaths like Star Destroyers out of orbit to like, or I think
Yeah, but that Star Destroyer isn't trying to stab him in the face or blow his head up.
That's all.
Yeah, but
been
the
retconned.
fact that so here's the problem with the comparison here. That's the obvious librarian. And it's like no. You got to
actually,
we got to actually look at power levels here. So yeah, if you play Force Unleashed, you're not even playing as Darth Vader. You're playing as his apprentice, Star Killer. And there's a scene where he yanks a Star Destroyer from orbit down onto the planet. So if we want to calculate the amount of force required
that's like
to
Magnus.
pull
angry.
on a Star Destroyer,
he's getting really into it.
Magnus level
Right.
capabilities.
like Magnus has Magnus pulled something that big
Well, Magnus is
with his mind.
Yeah.
Well, he kind of pulled the Tyranids over to
No, what happened was
turn on the
like some quick evidence from Magnus was like it's not as big as a Star Destroyer, but it was like he was fighting 2 Eldar Phantom Titans, and
By himself.
he just crushed them with his like he just like toppled them.
Okay.
And
well,
that was like
so now we have some sort of like reference for how strong
I would actually say
a Psyker can be.
the Force and psychic powers are very similar. It all
Right.
depends on the user.
So then Darth Vader, who is obviously very powerful,
Very powerful in the Force.
why wouldn't he be able to take on a librarian who's not Magnus?
Like I would definitely compare to something more like Magnus. And Magnus.
When has a librarian ever pulled a Star Destroyer out of the sky?
There aren't Star Destroyers.
Or a similar size object?
That's not his job to.
Okay, but okay, what is
able to pull a...
They start a certain distance apart. Now, one thing I'll grant you, Darth Vader's body, he's just human. There's nothing that keeps him alive. So he takes a bolter to the chest and he's dead, right? Whereas like the Space Marine, you can shove a lightsaber through him and he would not be dead. So like that point, yeah, physically there's no comparison.
Yeah.
But the reason that
lightsaber through the head, though.
lightsaber to the head would do it,
Yep.
as we have evidence in the video. But I'm saying like so if you, the physical, yeah, but the Jedi are not powerful because their bodies are powerful. They're powerful because you can't hit them, first off, because they're too fast and they're deflecting everything you're doing. So like who cares how strong a bolter round is if they can deflect it, right? Who cares how strong all that?
Deflect a bolter. Really.
Sure you can.
It would just,
He uses the force.
you would just stop it. You would just stop the momentum.
Yeah, he'd matrix it like Neo
I
does.
feel like
and
it'd
just
be like that scene in Deadpool where he's swinging his sword.
Yeah.
Bullets are really fast, man.
But I mean, if you can deflect a blaster round, which is like should be traveling closer to the speed of light, even though I know it doesn't do that in the film, then you can put your lightsaber up in time to hit the bolter round.
Okay, so again, if we
But
want to
they explode.
nerd out on Star Wars lore, the reason that the solid projectiles, you don't see them a lot in Star Wars, the Jedi feared them because when they did do that, it would just cause it to kind of melt and spray shrapnel.
That's what I thought.
And,
Like,
and
why would
bolter
they-
rounds are
That's
grenades.
established in the lore that solid weapons.
So they
like
banned
that.
them so the
They
Jedi
didn't ban
could win.
them, but
What did they establish in the lore?
that any solid projectile weapons,
In Star
slug
Wars.
throwers or whatever they call them in Star Wars, you couldn't deflect them with a lightsaber because they just melt and spray shrapnel at
But
you.
you can still use the force.
Yeah, if you could just stop
okay.
everything like Neo. And
That makes sense.
Yeah, you could have like a constant force bubble going on around you where you just slowly you're kind
Okay,
of
so-
pushing
Yeah,
out.
so
What's the-
while you're having a Space Marine librarian like charge at you, you could stop some of the pistol rounds he's shooting at you.
Yeah, but why
As
couldn't
he's, like,
why couldn't he
shooting
just
lightning and getting
why
ready to
couldn't he
stab you with
just
the sword?
casually deflect the librarian away with the force power? If he can move a star destroyer, then why not a tiny
Well,
space?
I think the
think
point
he
is the
would
Star
just
Destroyer
crush
scene
him
that
in
you
his
keep
arm.
talking about. Like, sure, it's a
Fair question.
monumental feat, but he's essentially just concentrating on just one thing. He's not being attacked by a
Of course,
9 foot tall homicidal
but
maniac.
that's where the scale is so much smaller that why wouldn't he just in that same moment be able to stop him in his tracks, keep his arm from moving?
Because
anywhere?
he has his deny the witch test in a psychic hood.
But does the
And
psychic
then when
hood
he-
stop force powers?
Why not?
Because force powers come from metachlorians, Steve.
That's probably tapped into the warp, just like
you can't.
just like librarians and psychers in the 40k universe. It's the same.
So are you saying that librarians have metachlorians too?
100%.
A lot of them.
Also, as you're deflecting,
Is that
all
where
those
psychic
bolter
powers come
rounds,
from?
They explode and launch the Jedi across the room and probably blow up all those organs. Remember, every of those rounds are grenades.
No, I know. So you
You're
stop.
just wrong.
So you stop. You stop him
I
from
don't
firing.
want to have this conversation anymore.
I think when it comes,
I just don't think it's hands down so obvious.
I think when it comes to Darth Vader, he's very powerful in the Force. He could be a contender.
or like Yoda or somebody
Or like
who's
any
shown
master,
to be able to
Like, I
pull.
think well,
they
not
have to be
necessarily-
strong in the Force, not necessarily like.
No,
Martial
no,
powers won't matter.
lightsaber.
It won't do nothing.
Lightsaber. No. Let's just. Yeah, you're right. If it comes down to like, okay, I'll agree not to use my force powers. If you agree not to use your psychic powers, the Jedi's dead.
Yeah.
In 2
Yeah,
seconds.
well, yeah,
Yes,
that,
no
that, no
Because
context.
I would
no
assume
context.
the ceramite armor would be able to deflect lightsabers because we have things that's canon in Star Wars that deflect lightsabers.
Yeah.
And so if this ceramite wouldn't be very good if it couldn't stop, a plasma sword. They use like force swords, which is essentially a similar idea, right?
Yeah, Force swords are very
Or
similar to
power
lightsabers,
swords. Sorry,
yeah.
power swords.
Okay, all right. So I think that that's
So who's the winner, Dave?
That's-
You're the moderator.
okay. Well, what you did this thing where you're like, hey, if we don't use psychic, we don't use force. It's essentially the same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, but that's
Might I suggest we've all put out the best armor we could. Mine was the best. We can just vote. Who do you think is more powerful?
Darth Vader or a regular librarian?
Oh, Darth Vader. That's
Darth
Vader.
Vader. Yeah.
Okay,
Darth Vader.
so
We're not talking like Magnus and Darth Vader. That's
think-
different.
comment below what you
Darth
think.
Vader?
We want to know, and then we'll do a group. Okay, vote. Who wins? Darth Vader? Hands up.
Oh, Darth Vader over what?
Darth Vader versus
over a
who?
librarian.
Over a librarian.
a
Yeah.
generic
Darth Vader.
Space
Always a vote
Marine
with Darth Vader.
Darth Vader, right?
Regular
Yeah, so it's Darth
librarian.
Vader.
Just a
I would go with Darth Vader.
Darth Vader.
So that's an easy. So Josh, no. Josh is the only one. No.
Yeah,
Sorry, Josh, you
I'll
lose.
say the generic librarian still probably puts up.
Darth Vader
It's a 50-50 maybe
Much
on that
plot
one.
armor.
If there's no
The
force
minute
power-
that librarian,
No,
We can't beat the
force
plot
powers.
armor,
Yeah.
right?
You can't beat Vader's plot armor.
Isn't that like a 2-up reroll
Yeah.
ad
But if
infinitum?
you go
It's just
generic to generic,
Like a Jedi Knight.
okay. Then
Space
okay,
Marine?
let's do that
That's
then.
what I
Yeah.
would-
let's go generic to generic then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who
I
wins
give
in
the
that case?
librarian.
That's harder. That's
Oh,
right.
that's my, that was my
There we
argument.
go.
I thought that's what we were talking about.
Because we could do name Space Marine Librarian, like I said to Luca, like Mephiston versus Darth Vader.
Nah, still Darth Vader.
I still Darth Vader, like in the expanded universe, they've like made him comically
Ooh,
powerful.
I would
Yeah.
say Mephiston over Vader.
like way too overtuned. Probably he's like very close to Magnus in power, and it's like so force
You would say Mephiston over Darth Vader, Steve?
yeah,
Okay, what about Magnus over Darth Vader?
Magnus.
Well, Magnus.
So that's an easy. But why is it such an easy jump?
Well, Magnus is such a significant power jump from Mephiston.
It's like a Primarch, super like equivalent of the Emperor, almost as strong as Emperor in psychic.
Would you say it's akin to like Jedi Knight to Darth Vader to regular Psyker librarian to Mephiston? Is that about the same?
Might even be a bigger
Probably,
jump
yeah.
for the Mephiston.
Yeah, Mephiston's a pretty big jump from a librarian, but like Magnus is like
Yeah.
real big.
You don't. If you're going to put a psychic power, then the only person that could take on Mephiston is
I'm
probably
actually
like the
just-
Emperor
Yeah.
or like
Okay.
some powerful Eldar.
Just real quick, I need to answer for Matthew because I'm actually very curious. I thought we were having a different conversation. So generic librarian versus generic Jedi.
No, I was saying
No,
Darth
I'm
Vader
asking you-
versus a librarian.
Yeah, I realized that now. We were having a different conversation.
So a generic Jedi
on one
Knight
note-
versus
Yes.
a Jedi Knight, so one that's good but not like a
Yeah.
Jedi Master, versus
A generic librarian.
a Space Marine librarian, not chief librarian, but
Yeah,
just regular librarian.
just one.
I would probably go with the librarian.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right,
yeah.
we're on the same page.
Yeah,
I'm
because-
less upset.
Because Jedi Knights, when you watch them fight in a mass, many of them miss getting like the blaster shots, right? So there's like when you watch them fighting a lot of dudes, it's like, oh, that Jedi Knight went down. Oh, that Jedi Knight
Yeah,
went down.
they're just,
I
They're
understand
good,
that.
but they're not like
and their
You were very
their
reasonable.
force powers
Yeah.
are pretty rudimentary as well. Like they could do like a little bit of force manipulation.
being able to push away, manipulate the arms of Space Marines so it never fires at it while deflecting everything, while trying to crush them, while doing the whatever. It's not going to happen.
No, not and the force of will of the Marine might be more powerful than the force of the like you like a Jedi Knight with force can only manipulate so much mass.
Yeah.
With what they're training, right? Like the strength.
Well, like Luke
Yeah.
is a good example in the movies. And when he's training with Yoda, he couldn't even lift the X-wing out of the swamp.
right? Yeah.
Right. And then later on, we see Starkiller pulling a Star Destroyer out of the sky. So clearly, there is a very large disparity between a noob
There was
like Luke. And Luke was really old when he started his training too, so that wasn't good. And his first fight against Darth Vader was laughable. So like, there's obviously a huge power difference between these.
there's
So yeah,
also,
no,
like-
Jedi Knight versus librarian hands down.
I think only like the big wig like Star Wars characters that are specifically powerful in the Force could really go toe to toe. There's the other,
But that's where it's
examples.
interesting. It's like somebody who can tap into the full power of the Force, or at least a good chunk, and somebody who can tap into a good deal of the psychic stuff. Like it kind of shows the power levels of the universes too.
So who's the most? That was my next question. So who's the most powerful being in Star Wars?
Oh, there's some example. It depends on like how like you can go into like the expand universe
You're
stuff.
pretty deep on that, yeah.
There's like some comics where some Sith lords are so beyond the scope of like comprehensible power, like immortal.
I thought it was Revan.
But there's some like that are just in comics here and there that are like beyond like Revan's history, like even well before him, that would like almost they're perpetuals. They can't die. They like go into a sun. They come back out there. The midichlorians reform their bodies somewhere else. I know it's real. I'd say that as like a catch on the Force. The Force.
Okay, what's his name? Revan.
Well, Revan
Revan,
is a really powerful Sith Lord.
Okay, so let's say there's Revan. Who's the most powerful in 40K?
The Emperor.
Currently,
Let's say it's current. Let's say it's not the Emperor. So like currently.
Tigurius or
No, it's
Mephiston?
not Gilliman.
Oh, as a Psyker.
Is it Psyker?
Oh, Magnus the Red. Probably.
No, current. Oh, he's in count.
He's the demon prince.
You're talking about, yeah, so non-demon Primarchs?
Why is there an exception there?
We can't. We have to keep censoring this down.
I said no. It could have been the other one, right? Could have been like the Emperor in Star Wars, the most powerful being.
I don't even know how strong Palpatine is. I don't know.
See, I think the problem here is that when you, if we, maybe we can agree to this, that if the Star Wars galaxy-wide empire at its height were to fight the 40K Imperium, that there would be no
40K Imperium would roll them.
40K Imperium would just destroy it. And so
yeah.
that's the problem. It's like we're not talking about
bigger.
So you have like this power. Excuse me. This power disparity between the two universes, and having access to the Force. Only a few people have access to the Force, whereas like too many people have access to
That's a
psychic
problem,
powers.
yeah.
It's actually a problem,
it's a
right?
problem.
And so they have so many to choose from that they're able to like find the best of the best of the best, and those are like most powerful psychers. And so even like mid-level psychers
Oh, yeah,
are
you have, like,
scary.
your Alpha plus psychers.
Yeah. And so I think that
level cities.
it's hard to compare any two universes because they'll go to different extremes as to their power levels. But when you got to look at the individuals within a universe, right? So
there's
so like the most powerful individual in Star Wars won't match up to the most powerful individual in Warhammer 40K.
I think it's a hard comparison. It's just because like the way it's written, right? Like they decide to keep a certain threshold of power when they write it. Yeah.
Right.
So okay, so
Keep it
what you're
more
saying is because it's not determined. Is that why you can't really do it?
Well, Star Wars isn't trying to get to these ludicrous heights of power, whereas 40K really is.
I don't know, man. When you say a dude goes into his sun, he's reformed with metachlorians. That sounds like a ridiculous level.
That's
of power.
like one.
It's a weird deep dive into a comic though. Whereas in 40K, that's just another Saturday.
Like you could be born in 40K as like an Alpha plus psyker who just untrained at all, but you can manipulate time and space around you, and you're just born with that power in 40K or in Warhammer.
Yeah, but Luke could like meditate and control like ships.
He's trained to do that though. That was like training, and like Luke's a very powerful individual.
I'm just saying stuff from movies. I don't know. I don't understand the power levels.
I'm just
at
getting
all.
sad thinking about like all the different 40K figures just beating up Luke. That's Star Wars.
So, yeah, no, he
and I'm
beat up
like,
Luke.
this is just
Yeah, he
getting more
beat
and
up
more
Luke.
sad. Like,
Yeah,
It's
he beat
like-
up Luke.
and then like another example, like the Force, the capabilities of the Force compared to the psychic powers of Warhammer, and then also the Imperial ships. Talking to Josh, but like there's built bigger too. The scales are bigger of the ships. They have more munitions.
well, because the 40K
They're just
universe.
They're planet sized, aren't they? Sometimes, like,
Not quite, but
there's some.
their amount of firepower is.
but they don't
stupid.
have a Death Star.
You mean
Their Death Star-
mean a single ship to
Yeah.
try to threaten an entire galaxy?
That's the thing.
The thing that can kill a star.
and the Death Star's
No, it doesn't
No,
kill.
the Star blew up planets.
Why is it called a Death Star? Such a
Why are they
dumb
called
name.
Star Destroyers?
I don't know.
They don't destroy.
Do they
sounds
destroy stars?
way better than a Death Star, but also the basic Imperial vessels, like Emperor class cruisers, can destroy planets on their own. They're like the Empire has access to thousands of Death Stars.
Oh dang.
Like the Emperor class, like the Exterminatus literally destroys a planet. That's like a common thing
Yes.
to do.
Yeah. So that's true. Actually, when
They
you
can
hear
travel-
Exterminatus, it's so common. It's like, let's try a little bit on Exterminatus.
They just destroy the planet. Yeah,
Yep.
That's
That's
like
true.
not a common thing, but it's something that several fleets are capable of doing.
Because
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you look at the two universes, and 40K is constant open warfare.
Yeah, only war.
And
Which
Star
means
Wars
they have to be at another
isn't
level.
Ever.
Yeah.
There's a empire fighting a little rebellion.
Correct.
And that's
That's fair.
There's no. They got the galaxy under thumb.
That's not even. It's not even a footnote.
I think
in the
we
40K
can all
universe.
agree. If we had to be magically transported to one of those universes, it
We go
would
Star
not be the
Wars.
40K one.
No, I'd go to Star
I
Wars.
will go Star Wars then a
Put a-
heartbeat.
They
Go to
both got-
Naboo and get all that sand in my clothes.
No, what a shame
Is it
that
a eating
everywhere.
party? So I think now is the time to compare another IP.
I was gonna say, yeah. What's another IP?
Yeah, let's change gears for a bit. So that one is
Voldemort versus Space Marine
and
Librarian.
it's funny. Like I was actually thinking that, but no.
Harry Potter?
Some guy with no nose.
I think it would have to be Lord of the Rings, right? So, but then it goes back to fantasy. It wouldn't be 40K. It would be fantasy.
We can still compare, like, you can measure certain powers, though, right?
Maybe one character versus one character, that makes more sense. Like, because like
How many Space Marines would it take to conquer Middle Earth?
actually, yeah, that's a good question.
7?
But they have wizards though, right?
That's
There's
They have
not that
wizards.
many of them.
a captain and a librarian.
But they got
Conquer the
they
whole
got
Middle Earth.
Gandalf. So how do you
I
Ow.
watched the movies. Gandalf didn't do a whole lot.
Hey,
He barely has any
He
spells.
raised his voice really deep and became a big shadow. Okay,
He had
so
thaumaturgy.
Yeah.
All the guy had.
I don't know. I can't think of another IP. We were talking a little bit about Halo.
You look at the Halo IP.
They're super soldiers, but I think there's not a lot of them.
I know one that might not be as mainstream, although it's had a really good TV series. It's the Foundation TV series. Watching that was just fantastic, but I don't think that's going to be.
Oh, I've never seen.
yeah, I
it.
never
That's the
seen
problem.
it.
It's
There's
not-
no
it's
there's no
not-
reference.
yeah,
That's
no.
that's the issue with
It's
that.
really good. It's really good, but
Is that Apple TV?
I think so. Yeah, it's on Apple TV. But
I think I
yeah,
have a
it's
bookmark.
really good sci-fi. So
You
go
know
watch
what?
it.
That's the question then. What IP could possibly stand up to 40K other than Star Wars, which clearly it can't?
I think
well,
it's kind of written to not be comparable. In a
Well, that's
way,
not true.
yeah.
That's not true. You go to comic books.
Yeah, true.
Okay,
Thanos,
so is
Thanos, for
Marvel-
example, would
Marvel
be
would be it, right?
yeah, like
That's true.
or even DC. You can get like
You have some pretty strong
like Dark Side and all that kind of stuff. Like
Okay,
Galactus is
so let's
pretty
go
strong.
there. Let's go there. Okay, let's
yeah,
say Marvel.
or planet eating entities.
So yeah, like Galactus, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think Galactus. I think Galactus is taken care of by the Imperium.
Yes, in that
yeah,
case,
like-
yes. But like, there's enough threats in the comic book ones because they have to keep escalating, right? Because if you talk
Right.
about reasons why the power is high, it's usually because an IP's been around for so long that they got to keep one up in themselves.
We always have Saiyans from Dragon Ball. I guess they're pretty strong.
Ooh, I think that actually might
See, I
be
can't
a
help
thing.
there. I don't know anything about.
I don't
Dragon Ball.
know much. It's something I can't. I'm trying to think of anything. I'm like, there's some animes out there that can do it.
But let's say Marvel for a second though, because I think that one is actually there's some beings in Marvel. In fact, is that a no contest one? Because I think Marvel wins.
Or well, like, okay.
Well, it depends what
one
you
situation.
against like a regular space marine. Like, what are we comparing?
Okay, so it's like we were talking about like Galactic with 40K,
Threats.
they can destroy planets and they can like do that type of stuff, right?
So are we
Threats,
talking-
threat level.
Actual Marvel DC or the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Okay, that's a good
Because,
distinction.
like,
So
Thanos' army in the cinematic universe gave like these very powerful beings run for their money, and Space Marines would knock them out in 5 minutes.
yeah, so then we got to talk
In the
about
movies.
what's the most. Let's go to comic books then.
Because Doctor Strange in the comics is simply more powerful than he is in the movies.
Same.
for sure.
I mean,
Doctor
Scarlet Witch, same
Strange
thing,
is
right?
Same thing. Scarlet Witch is just a whole nother level.
All of them are like that
Well,
though.
those
The
are
Hulk,
examples
Thor.
of like really strong psychers, right? In
Yeah.
comparable universe, so like that's hard to beat.
So did you guys see What If? Marvel's What If?
Yes.
Okay,
What a good
so
series, yeah.
that was like one of my favorite Marvel series because they just ran with stuff. And
Yeah, it was giving them the liberty to basically talk about whatever crap they want.
So this is spoiler alert. So if you want to watch that series, watch that series first. Don't listen to the next whatever few minutes that we're about to talk about. But in that series, have you guys seen it?
Oh yeah.
I
have.
Do you want to? Are you going to, or do you not care? We'll just
I'm
continue.
good. Just keep going.
Just continue.
going, yeah.
Okay. All right.
I've heard of a lot of it already.
So like where Vision actually is Ultron, right? And he gains the power of the gauntlet essentially, right? So he's able to.
Oh yeah. There's no contest.
There's no
Oh, it's-
contest,
Sorry. Keep going.
right? Because it's one thing for Thanos to kind of do whatever he's going to think about it, but for Ultron, who is the kind of the almost an infinite algorithm, like how do you? And he's like chasing down characters that are like the Watcher, right? I think that's his name, or the Beyonder.
Yeah, the Watcher. Yeah.
Where he's watching all realities at the same time,
All multiverses. Yeah.
all multiverses, like that's just insane power level. And then he can see the Watcher, and then he's chasing the Watcher through all these dimensions, which is nuts. Is there anything in 40K that can even come close to whatever that is?
Well, the thing is with that one, so with Ultron getting all the Infinity Stones, what he was basically able to do was he wiped out the entire universe. So like as soon as you're wiping out a universe,
That's fair.
which
an auto click
galactic
mate.
size
Yeah.
empire is going to stand a chance? And it even shows in one of the clips him being as big as a galaxy and going and just biting into it.
Oh wow.
It's one of the when he's fighting Doctor Strange, who also was able to stand up to him, not perfectly, but he was able to stand up to him.
That shows Doctor Strange's potential power level.
Well, that was a special Strange. So that was I don't remember.
Oh, true. That was one of the Strange.
I
that was
can't remember what he's
way-
called. He's
way
the
more
one that like soaked up every power he could find.
Yeah. He absorbed the powers of everyone.
Yeah, he's not the Doctor Strange.
All of these things, like the finish, these great big powers come from entities in the Marvel universe that are godlike beings. 40K's godlike beings are like the 4 major chaos gods, and the difference between these two universes and why Marvel's going to win every time is the godlike beings, their power is adapted at pretty much full strength, with some exceptions, onto regular people, or they themselves directly impact the universe, the world. Whereas the greater chaos gods they don't come here. They don't.
They can't.
They can't. They don't.
Yeah.
The most powerful of the beings in this universe doesn't come into play down in like the regular man in any way, other than like cults and like demonic possessions and stuff. But the greater beings themselves have no actual physical influence. Whereas the Marvel universe, half the stories are about their greater physical interference.
Yeah, it's
fair.
almost to like we say to comic proportions, right? Like it's,
Yeah.
which I mean also means laughable, but it's so hard when a story is written just to kind of go wherever it wants to. And I won't give spoilers here, but just like if you watch the Loki TV series as well and you see how that ends, and you realize just like it's the scope is literally universal, and so it's like then we go back to Warhammer 40K and all of a sudden it's just a skirmish. It's a blip.
Yeah.
The galactic conflict is small.
Yeah, like if the Tyranids ate, if you look at the whole billions of years of the universe, if the Tyranids took 1 million years to eat the galaxy and move on, and you look at the time scale of the universe, that's like, did anybody notice?
No.
Did anybody see that? No. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like while they ate it's like there are just so many galaxies
That's
out
fair.
there that eating a galaxy, if you really zoom out, is not even a big deal.
Because how old is
It's a bigger
Thor?
story.
Isn't Thor like 6,000 years old or something?
Right, which is still young.
Yeah,
That's young,
fair.
right?
That's fair.
So
Yeah.
like if
And he's a god, right, of that universe. So
right.
A demigod.
Well, he's
no, he's
No, he's a god. He's a god.
He'd be like a god to us.
He was referred to as a demigod in the movie.
Right, then that's where that word doesn't have any meaning in that universe, in the Marvel cinema or Marvel universe period. It's just like I'm a god. What he's really saying is I'm very powerful.
I'm just super, super strong, and none of you can do
It's like,
anything.
because what's the definition of a god? That you're immortal? Well, you're not immortal. You can die.
Yeah.
Maybe you do age and eventually die as well. So it just took you longer.
He's just a different race.
It's like me looking at my dog and going, "I'm a god to you because I live way longer than you, and I'm big, taller, and I'm way more powerful than you. I must be a god." It's like, no, you're just a dog. So that's basically what the Asgardians do. We're gods, and as they look down on everybody else.
What? Like it's the same with Superman. He's from Krypton. What are they called?
Kryptonians.
They're Kryptonians. Okay.
Oh, yeah, what about Superman versus a Space Marine librarian?
Oh, Superman for sure.
I think Superman.
Yeah, Superman.
Are you sure?
Does psychic powers is that count as magic?
Ooh, could you believe that he was?
Boy, does he have an?
kryptonite in him? Could you believe it? Because the Psyker can make him believe that.
So hold on. Why does it matter if it's magic?
Superman has a weakness to magic.
Oh, interesting.
True, he does.
But technically, they're not magic.
Right, but is it magic?
No, because it's scientific. As much as it's hard to put a
human.
Okay,
evolution,
so
evolution.
in the
yeah,
DC
it's a biological evolution of the brain.
We have to go to the DC universe. Is there
what's
any kind of
magic?
comparison that anybody can think of that would have similar abilities? Because all those abilities over there are going to be classified.
There's got to be somebody in the comic books who taps into another dimension's power.
Isn't like
Give me an example, because I don't know off the top of my head.
Dark side.
Etrigan.
Like who's like, I will draw from the power of this
Dr. Fate.
this under universe and
These are
pull
all
its power.
These are all things. So I would say,
Dr. Fate. Yeah.
I would say, by the rules set by DC Universe, these librarians would be magic. So Superman would be.
So Superman wouldn't stand a
weak to
chance
them.
then.
No, I still think Superman wins.
oh, okay.
Why though? Why?
Hey, Superman.
Speed. Superman. I hate Superman. He's he is too powerful.
Can Psychers manipulate time? They can.
Some can.
Some
Because like Zinch can you do the time stuff, so like you can, yes.
Yes.
So then,
But not-
why does
not all of
Superman win?
But Superman can manipulate time too.
Yeah, he also-
he just goes flies around the world really fast.
But does he
not
have?
canon.
Does he have the level of awareness that a Psyker would have?
no, he's kind of like a little kid, because even he always defers to Batman when they're in Justice League stuff, right?
Right. He's not that
He's
great
like,
at tactics.
No, he hasn't figured it out. He's just a blunt instrument, really.
Yeah.
He's had no reason to really think about.
He hasn't
it.
anything
Yeah.
to really challenge
Yeah.
him in that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
No
you
growth.
get something like Batman. He's like, I defer to you, Batman, or regular man with a bat suit, but with a lot of money, which I could also have, because I could just rob banks and have the money, but I still wouldn't match up to your power. And
So why, Steve? Why? Why do you say Superman?
What? Sorry, what?
You
I was
said
gonna say about
Superman wins
Matt
over the
Rock and
Psyker.
Batman,
Why?
Who's the greatest ever? What?
he is.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Good.
it's
I'm
biased.
agreeing.
It's
That's why
childhood
Superman
bias.
defers to him. I love Batman,
Okay, good.
but he's just regular man in a bat suit.
He's not just
No, no,
What,
no.
what if
He's
we go on a
much more
really
than a
gonna
regular.
get this.
He's much more than a regular man.
He's just really.
What if we do?
He's
Like
not
Superman
superhuman.
versus the
That's what you're
Emperor?
meaning.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I think the Emperor.
I mean, like, let's get some of the 40k heavy hitters in, because we're again using generic librarian.
Yes.
So
All right, so Magnus versus Superman.
Well, the
Magnus
Emperor
is
when he was still walking around versus Superman.
Oh, the Emperor.
Yeah, the Emperor.
the Emperor versus Superman.
Yeah.
Emperor.
Yeah,
The Emperor.
Yeah, but you know, in my mind, the Emperor is already Superman. Because of Henry. So
Yeah,
it's
Henry
like-
Cavill played both of them.
He fights himself.
So let's pull back one step. So Superman versus any of the Primarchs, I give it to Superman as well. I look at creatures like Darkseid, who Thanos is essentially for his
Yeah.
Those are Primarch level beings to me, and Superman has always been able to take them. So I think Superman takes every Primarch except for maybe Magnus.
The Magnus
But
is always
Superman has got his plot armor, so he wins obviously.
Fair, yeah.
Okay, now just to
But
go
not
back,
after being like thrown down and almost losing, and then Magnus doing a monologue.
That's where Magnus.
I
would
mean,
fall.
even
That's when Magnus loses. He does the
even
monologue.
Demon
he
Rudd
does everything wrong.
put Superman into his healing coma. But yeah. But he's like Superman's coma. Like Superman wins against all the Primarchs, so it's the greater. If you had to fight Korn in Korn's realm, I would say Korn's got it.
Well, you can't fight
I know.
Korn in his realm, because that just doesn't make any sense.
But you
can't fight
can
in
fight
40
him in his realm.
Has
No,
any-
Korn's-
nobody's fought Korn himself.
Well, no, not
Not in 40k.
But Korn cares
Age of Sigmar,
not.
maybe.
from where you fight him.
But it doesn't matter. Has anybody in canon ever actually fought one of the Chaos Gods?
Scarbrand tried to fight Korn.
Tried to, like, actually got to him?
Did he?
Scarbrand?
Did he?
That's why Scarbrand's so messed up. Yeah.
So Scarbrand.
Tell.
Well, it's like he tried to usurp
He was kind
Korn.
of like, Dad, I don't think you're that big of a deal. Yeah.
What happened? Well, like what?
Oh, like Korn pretty much snapped his fingers and said, "No, you're not gonna."
I take my powers away from you?
That's it. He's like, "I'll take your wings," and I think he cranked his madness to 11. So Scarbrand went insane with rage. Where like Bloodthirsters succumb to rage, but like they still have like intricate
and
thought.
Yet these
and
beings
everything.
never directly influence the greater universe.
Like the Chaos
if they
God-
came out and did.
They can. Obviously, they can.
I gotta believe, not that this matters, that in that universe they know they can't, because if they do, everybody dies, unless they die.
That's fair. So they're literally attacking themselves. That's kind of
They're
what it feels
attacking
like.
what's feeding them, and what's.
Well, it's kind of weird because
keeping
in 40K, it's a little different than Sigmar. They have different.
Yeah, they're
representation
definitely
of the
different.
gods.
Yeah.
Sigmar, they're a lot more grounded and a lot more approachable. But like 40K, the demons are like almost like elements of themselves. Like it's weird because Scarbrand was just part of Khorne, but like got like its own. It's like an AI going rogue almost. It's what
shards
that
of
is.
type of thing, a fractal
sort of like
piece of.
weird. Like you shouldn't be doing this, so you just kind of punished him and sent him on his way. Yeah, to like mindlessly go fight forever.
I just picture like he's here's a desk and he comes up. Hey, I can get you. He's like,
Bandit. Yeah, essentially. As far as I understand, that's generally what happened. Yeah, wasn't much of a fight, but he tried to. I don't know what made him think he could.
Okay, just to bring it back to the Marvel power scale thing, because we whispered about it real quick, and I don't know if there's enough to have a conversation here, because I don't know if other people are familiar, but
It's more
are
vague,
people familiar with Annuncia in the 40K? I don't know if I'm saying it right either.
That's correct. Yeah, if I was to say Annuncia, does that ring any bells?
Okay,
No, it's
so that's like that's essentially the Infinity Gauntlet trump card, kind of like you just control everything.
Yeah, so like it's like a Dan Abnett thing. I think he mostly about it.
I think he was the one that started it, because one of the bad guys in the book is trying to continue the discovery of it. But I think in the heresy novels they get into
touch
it a
on
little
it
bit too.
as well. Yeah, they're in
And
Abnett books.
I think,
too.
and I think that's part of end goal. Was one of the end goals of the Emperor was discovering Annuncia, because that's basically the language that is just creation.
I don't know anything about it other than the language
You
of
can
creation.
you can manipulate and do whatever you want. It's the same with the Infinity Gauntlet.
So
you
you
just
wanted to
snap
learn
and you do
math?
whatever you want.
is that what basically?
Kind of, yeah. The universal math, everything is.
But you have to be able to physically say the words to unleash the power of the word, sort of thing. It's like single words to one word could level a city, kind of a thing.
Because that's the way that they try to represent it, though, is that like the little bits and pieces that certain humans have been able to discover
Like a
of Annuncia.
syllable.
Like it's just a syllable might be enough to make somebody turn inside out. You know what I mean? Like
It's
there's
like Skyrim. You remember the
dragon speech?
board? The dragon speech. and everything?
Fusroda.
Like you could say like one syllable of the word and it'd be like a portion of its power. Where you said like Fusroda, you'd have like the whole thing, like the big boom.
right, but crank that up to the 40K scale of
Yeah,
like crank it up to 11, and it's just crazy over the top. And
Exactly. Yeah. Like you could they described it as like you could like immediately the entire population of a planet would just die with like one word.
you can just make the planet not exist.
Or you can just unexist the planet.
You could erase it from
To bring
all
it back
time
around,
and space.
the 40K universes versus the Marvel universe or the DC universe, but you got to remove the Annuncia, and you got to remove the greater gods. Those like powers though that are just like they're like they're basically what do you call those plot points or
Plot armor.
not plot armor, but things that are just like what's that word?
So okay, so you remove the chaos gods. That's what you're saying.
No, because they're not a thing that like it's just
Can actually interact with us
can
in
like
the
snap
physical
the finger
reality.
and change
Okay.
the whole universe.
So you're talking about remove the Annuncia because that sounds like it's an auto checkmate.
But
Yeah.
don't really know.
Except that to be able to learn it is very hard.
Correct. Almost impossible.
But then it's moot anyway.
Even the
'cause you wouldn't be able to learn it
The
anyway.
Emperor understood it. as
The,
far as
the,
I
the, few, the few places I've read about that in actual novels, the person trying to read it, I remember there was one where he's like, okay, I think I had to read it. And he's like, he reads it, and then the guy's head next to him explodes, and he goes, oh, I better be a little more careful.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Because he could kill himself by accident.
And, like,
so
even-
it's not. It's it's powerful, but it's
It's something that
it's like
humans
being
would
given
not
a
necessarily
gun that
be
you
able
don't
to
know
do.
where the barrel points.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, let's pull the trigger. It's like, oh, that was close.
Yep.
How do you even learn that without accidentally
It's
like
reckless
doing
abandon
stuff to
kind of thing. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you just like they even like they mispronounce the word a little bit and like their mouth like their throat starts bleeding.
Yeah, they
and
die,
it's
and they
just
can
like-
just die.
they can
And
just
that's
die,
but again,
yeah.
that's like you said, like a syllable
Correct.
of a
Yeah,
word.
the Emperor understood it and he was studying it as well, but he knew like the dangers of it, so he didn't really mess with it too much. But It was one of those things you wanted to keep secret, like everything else.
Sorry, the word I was looking for was McGuffins. Take away these McGuffins.
Yeah.
The 40K universe beats the Marvel universe without their MacGuffins.
You think so?
Yes. There's too many big threats. Whereas it's not even.
Again, I think it's just written that way, though. It's
well, that's the thing.
It's written to be over the
grand
top.
scale.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts below. Super curious. Obviously, it's going to go back and forth. And what other universes do you think could even compare and stand up to it?
Yeah,
with all of the
that's
MacGuffins,
a good question.
or without? It's a pretty big question because it's like, like Star Wars seems to be the obvious one that we go to, and then I like the Marvel because that makes sense too. But then very quickly, it's like, no, that's too powerful. So what would be a good like equal then? That's the question that I have for you and everyone. This has been a fantastic segment.
Come on here for a sec. You want to be in this?
I want to be in anything, but you're being too.
You should be in this.
Sure.
You should here.
Do I look stupid?
Yeah. No, come on in. Come on. You definitely you don't. You look perfect.
Right. Okay.
This. Do you know what this is?
That's a bug.
Yes. Do you know what it's from?
Ravaged Star.
It is from Ravaged Star. Yes.
It has to be from Ravaged Star.
Yes. It is from. It is. Thank you very much, Jack. Yeah.
Yep.
Barnyard Wargaming. He's here visiting us, and we figured we'd just talk about this just for a moment. Even though this is a sponsor segment, we're self-sponsoring this video.
Of course.
People are watching the Maelstrom of Lore right now, and we gotta make money somehow.
Somehow.
Because YouTube doesn't pay enough, and
I know.
So it's really what it is. You have your own YouTube channel, so you know exactly, right? So
I know.
So this is the best way to support us right now, MiniWarGaming, is by taking a look at these. Game found link in the description to take a look at all the bugs.
Get a bug.
And check out Barnyard Wargaming.
Today, right now in this segment, echoes of the past. What changes have happened to the Space Marines over the editions is the discussion. So, of course, leave your comments below and your thoughts. Let us know what you guys think and some obvious changes that have taken place. And let's start it off. What's the most obvious one? Most obvious change, Space Marines,
Like lore-wise,
previous editions. I would say tabletop. Well, we talked a lot about the lore in previous segments. Let's go to the tabletop for a little bit.
Tombs.
Do you say
That's
extra wound. That's a big
100% improvement of their survival
two
rate.
wounds?
Twice as many wounds.
My favorite change to Space Marines is when they get charged by 5 orcs in 2nd edition, as opposed to when they get charged by 5 orcs in like 7, 8, 9th edition, 10th edition. The orcs will probably win. No chance in 2nd edition.
That's why 2nd edition is a better representation of it. Actually, we were talking about that earlier. 2nd edition represented Space Marines damn good.
Maybe. Yep.
Yeah.
But it was more of a skirmish level game.
Yeah. You'd have about 40 orcs against 10 Space Marines.
5.
No, like the army list would be like 10 Space Marines have 300
Did you have
points.
10 in that game?
Yeah, you get 10 in the starter box. Yeah.
He only needed to use 5 though.
I never got
You
past
just get
1.
your combat squad, and you get 2 squads of 5. You get 1 flamer squad and a missile squad.
One squad just didn't show up.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, that was off the.
No, that's the perfect answer
Oh, I
because
guess, we're echoes of the past.
echoes of the
Second
past.
edition represented Space Marines really, really well.
Yeah. So
Only because of how the close combat worked, mostly.
okay.
Yeah.
So having never played 2nd edition, that's an interesting question because I haven't lived through playing that on the tabletop, but that would be an interesting experience to actually feel that as a Space Marine, that like the power more closely related to the lore.
Well, we played it a little bit in the what was that mashup you did? Shadow War Armageddon, but it was the Inquisimunda.
Yeah. Right before 8th edition.
Yeah, because you had your mechanics in that were using the old Necromunda rules for combat, which were the 2nd edition 40k combat.
Kind of,
rules.
yeah.
So you did technically play a little bit of it, but we're going way back now.
Why? Because of Gorka Morka?
At the end of 7th edition, we played a skirmish kind of level game of Shadow War Armageddon that Games Workshop put out, but then I mixed it in with some Inquisimunda from the community, which is kind of like 2nd or 3rd edition combat.
So second, it'd be like
where each fight is resolved individually. You roll your dice and you compare the attacks.
Okay.
Ones are fumbles and give them plus another, and all that kind of stuff. So we did that, but it was a long time ago. So
to quickly summarize it, you'd have 5 orcs charging, say 10 orcs charging a squad of 5 Marines, like a 2-to-1 across the board ratio. But then you do the first Marine fight against an orc, you resolve it. The orc's probably dead. And then you do the second orc fighting that Marine. It's a whole different resolution. So that Marine gets to fight every time for every model he's in base contact with.
But there is a penalty for each additional
correct.
one.
For every outnumber you are, the enemy gets a little bit of a bonus to try and help them out. But the Marine could, if he keeps rolling well enough, just take on like 5 orcs on his own, 6 orcs on his own. That's why that system represented the heroic nature of the Marines in those like kind of tight situations where they're shooting their gun, but the gun has its own capabilities. But when they get to close quarters combat or hand-on-hand combat, that's where the Marine really shines. And it's like reflexes, its speed, its characteristics, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, because generally speaking, I think when you look back at that, like if you're playing the Marines the way you're supposed to play them, like you're making smart tactical choices, you don't lose Marines. They can take on way more than their number.
Yep.
You can make mistakes and get overwhelmed, and sometimes there's still a crazy dice roll that could happen that maybe when the Marines goes down. But generally speaking, if you're playing them smart, you can take on way more than what you have,
well, just
number wise.
Just to give you an example, their points back in 2nd edition, 10 Marines was 300 points, 30 points a model back then.
And how many points were you playing in a game?
Well, probably like 1,000 to 1,500, maybe. Yeah. So
that's a big game.
That's a pretty big game.
That's a big game as well. Well,
he asked Luca what he was playing back then.
Yeah,
Luca likes big games.
I love 2nd edition specifically.
Yeah.
There's a lot going. It can be kind of a exhausting experience after like a full big game because there's a lot of things to resolve. But like every little resolution has its own little story to it too, which is nice.
Well, if I can add on to like one of the changes I've noticed to the Space Marines over the editions, besides like the whole 2 wound thing, which has kind of become negated because then everything else got the same power scale, right? Yeah. Is what you really saw was their treatment of the chapters, and so and all the different sub factions of Space Marines, and so like how do they work with Grey Knights, how do they work with Black Templar, how do they work with Ultramarines, all these different things, and so that's gone back and forth. Where they split the books like crazy, and then they kind of combine them again, and then they split them again, and they combine them again.
They're never really happy with it, yeah.
Well, it's because it's their number 1 selling line, and so it's like, how much do you dig? If something sells a lot, you develop more of it, and when you develop more of it, you can kind of start to subdivide it and be like, should Ultramarines have their own book? Like, do they have any unique units besides a couple named characters? It's like maybe we add some. It's like the decision to make unique units within each of these is just it's a business decision. And so and I remember at one point just looking at it all being like, there are way too many books for Space Marines because each book is 90% of the same thing as the other book. And so then they would combine them, but then like Space Wolves get a lot more variety. Like, why did Space Wolves get a lot more
as they
variety?
should? I mean, they're awesome.
Yeah, they are awesome. I don't
Because
disagree.
they're not Codex compliant.
But most of them aren't.
That's
Codex
only a new
compliant, though.
problem, though, Matt. Is when Space Wolves, Dark Angels, Blood Angels were their own separate thing, there was plenty of generic Space Marine stuff that they never had access to.
Right.
Now they have access to everything plus their stuff.
Right, but the question is, should they have access to the generic Space Marine stuff?
No.
Well,
but for sales, you want to sell more stuff, right? But the problem is the moment you let them have access to it, everybody becomes vanilla.
There are, that's so, currently the problem.
Way back in the 2nd edition, everybody had the same rules. A couple of minor special rules are different, but it was chapters were defined by the special characters you brought, which back then were far more common and acceptable. And they try to separate them with their own chapter special rules and unique units and stuff like that, and then it all gets pulled back around. We just been in the hobby too long.
Yeah, well, I look at the Tyranids and how they used to be. Every high fleet has its own rule, and now it's like. But so if you wanted to play close combat, you played this high fleet. You wanted to play shooting, you play this high. But now they're like, no. We're just going to have how you build your army. It's the thematic thing. And so you're seeing that more with the Space Marines too, that they brought it back to. Well, what is a? Well, give me off the top of my head. I can't remember No, the non-named ones.
What's that?
The vanilla ones. Well, I can't remember what they're called.
Like, what do you mean?
Like the Gladius Strike Force.
The Gladius Strike Force. That's like the Ultramarine one, essentially.
Yeah, but it can be used by anybody. So it's like it's always that age-old question for them. Because they've even just recently discontinued a large portion of the Space Marine line because it got too bloated. And so that's always going to be the motivation behind these changes, right? Is how do we balance models versus what we want to have on the table, like what and that. So you're going to see bigger sweeping changes that way. What's available to a chapter? Like when Primaris Marines came out, and they had this distinction between Firstborn and Primaris. Now that distinction has kind of gone away.
That's a smart move.
But is that a retcon or is that a continuation of the lore? Now a Terminator could be Primaris. That could be a dude inside. That could be a Primaris dude inside, or it could be a regular guy inside.
I like to narratively that was always the case. I liked in 8th edition, but for their sales, they had to differentiate them. I assume because no one would have bought them.
I think he's right about that.
Well,
I don't disagree.
I don't think no one, but. A lot more people probably bought them because they had newer, shinier rules. And now that a big portion of the players actually have them, they can just amalgamate.
And they can amalgamate.
Yeah.
Well, see that, and that's the thing. So I am of the camp that because they come out with models before they come out with what they are, right? Like, let's design the models and we'll figure out later on what the rules are. I am near certain that when they decided to do the Primaris Marines, that they weren't Primaris Marines, that they were just the new kits for the tactical Marines.
Yep.
Because if you look at the original, and I know now most of the Primaris stuff doesn't have a one-to-one thing, but the Intercessor was clearly a tactical Marine. He was just a bigger tactical Marine.
Yep.
And so, but at some point, somebody had to make a business decision. They looked at it being like, Space Marines are our number one sales. We've got an opportunity here. And so I think there was a decision made where they're like, well, let's call it something new and make them better and all that. So I don't want the whole that to become the topic. It's more just like how much that leaks into what then becomes lore.
Right.
So now if we're going to have this financial decision to sell these things as this, well, now we got to write lore for them. I remember reading the first story, and I'm not going to say which story it is because I don't want to make fun of the author. But I just remember reading it, and it just felt.
but that's so much shade.
No, because I read it, and it read like an advertisement. It's like, and then the Space Marine Intercessor came in and fired his bolt rifle as the Space Marine Aggressor Squad came in and fired their Flamestorm gauntlets. Like, I read it, and I was like, okay, this is kind of lame the way you're writing it. It's not very cinematic. It's very merchandise.
So it's clinical. Like
it felt merchandise.
It's like you're writing a living encyclopedia.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's just like it didn't have any soul to it. And so I feel like that happens is that kind of pushes the lore choices. So
any money?
So
it was include all these new words in ChatGPT.
Exactly. It was before ChatGPT was a big thing. This was years ago. Many. This is like the advent of Primaris.
Maybe they had it. Maybe they had it in an early version.
Had early. That's why.
It's so bad. I couldn't get to through the story because I was just like, oh, okay, stop it. It's just like, and this is almost like saying, and this one cool toy came out and said to the other cool toy, all the little kids should buy me, and it's just like, oh, this is a bad story. But that's going to influence it though. It's going to have a huge influence.
Okay, I was always curious how much that would have like added to the lore throughout the years. Same thing, like new things coming out, they got to write rules for it. Now they got to put it in the lore. But they wanted to sell this one model, so now they really made this one model. Now we have to put it in the story.
Yeah, but then how do you explain the Primaris? Oh, it's a new gene seed. Okay, let's make a whole story about that, and it kind of cascades. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's how good stories are made sometimes.
But then it does start to do things like, well, then what happens next? Well, now we'll make, a couple of years has passed. Now we're going to upgrade all the firstborn to have 2 wounds. Well, why? Why all of a sudden on the table do they have 2 wounds and the Primaris had 2 wounds?
Is this the first time in 30 years we actually saw the models dictate the lore, not the other way around?
Probably not. It's probably the first really, really obvious time.
Yeah, I'd say so. There's probably been other examples. I can't think of anything right now, but
from what I understand, it's a several year process to go from concept to on the table for when they're going to make a new model, and so they don't always. I doubt they have the lore right off the bat. It's probably more like the
I'm just
artist.
more thinking about like characters and types of things where I'm fairly confident models first across the board, like named characters for Space Marines in particular, before like we have models and then the novels, but now we have Primaris stuff and characters getting turned into Primaris in the novels because the models are getting updated.
Right, because it's like, oh, we got to make that guy Primaris. So write a story about how he died and then got reborn as a Primaris.
And then the whole process of what they call crossing the Rubicon.
Yeah,
like invent that and write that all up.
And once again, I'm not saying anything against that. That's how you keep a universe alive, right? Is you keep coming up with new ideas for it. But you are going to have that dictating it. So I think the Primaris line is kind of the biggest obvious one because it's their biggest seller, so it's going to stand out the most. But the same thing is going to happen with all the other lines.
It was like there was other things when the Centurions came out. They were kind of
heavily mocked.
Yeah, like the Marines in a Marine thing.
Yeah, they already had Space Marine. So what about Space Marine? Space Marine.
I remember the same thing. Actually, I like when the Wolves starting their 5th edition updates. That's when I didn't like much of that.
I got out of 40K for a little while on that one.
Oh yeah, that was that. Oh yeah.
So explain that. Okay, what's the context of the wolves there?
I did not like the Thunderbolt.
It felt like it kind of jumped the shark a little bit because they went for me. And again, this is me remembering something from many moons ago. It felt like the Space Wolves went from this really cool Viking Nordic kind of theme that had like a wolf motif to it.
Yep.
To this is Wolf Lord Wolfie Wolfenson riding his giant thunder wolf's paw.
Yeah, it went from like
swinging his wolf tooth wolf sword. And like
Well, it's like corn. Everything is blood something or skull something or something blood something skull.
it was kind of like that before, right? Like,
Yeah.
Gore
now the
soaked.
wolves
Let's
go-
not forget that one.
What's that?
Gore soaked.
Or something.
yeah. So I mean, like it felt like that way a little bit already before. So they took something I thought was super cool, and they're like, I'm like, okay, this is again, it jumped the shark, and now they're riding giant wolves, and I'm like, I never minded people's conversions of that,
yeah.
but now like, okay, where do we go from there? Like, what the next time I play against the Space Wolf?
They are
what's this-
wolves.
What's this over the top thing gonna be? Because now Space Marines riding wolves is too basic.
So
Yeah.
were you upset with the Wolfen? Like, you remember the
I didn't
original
like
Wolfen?
No, the Wolfen were cool. Like the
metal
idea
ones
of the
back in
13th
the-
Company, Eye of Terror, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
No, that was cool because there was kind of cool backstory to it.
Yeah.
So
Other
that
than-
Wolfen is okay, but put him on a wolf. That's it.
No, it was more like they started changing everything to like Bloodclaw was always around, but like Wolf Lord, Wolf, like all that
Yeah,
stuff.
some of the naming conventions kind of
They
went a little
started
bit funny.
changing then as well.
And like,
Long fangs are unique.
Oh, but that's all gone now, right?
no, that's all
How
still.
is it now? It's not a. It's a captain now.
Yeah, it's a captain now.
Yeah. So
I
a
don't,
lot of
I don't call them captains. I call them Jarls. Or
yeah, no, they were
They
like
used to-
Wolf Lords and stuff before what
Yeah.
I was talking about, but yeah.
yeah. I always
Jarl
like,
sounds way better.
I always like they used to be well, they were like they would be Jarls in the narrative, but they were always called the Wolf Lord. But that was never really mentioned in the books, which was kind of weird.
Yeah, there was. I mean, like if you go back and you look at what they did with the Heresy novels
Yeah.
to make the Space Wolves kind of cool again,
The Heresy Wolves now
we're the
are-
wolves that stalk the stars, and you know, the Imperial Scribe was like
So that's
Space Wolf.
So that's a funny story. So that's a story that maybe not a lot of people know, but Leman Russ was the second found Primarch. So it was Horus and Leman Russ. And then Horus did not like him. Because Leman Russ is, if anyone is unfamiliar, he's the Primarch of the Space Wolves. He was he had this he aired himself as kind of like a numbskull.
Well, he was the noble savage.
Yeah,
But he
exactly. But he was like a lot smarter than he would allude to. And Horus fell for his ruse completely. He's like, why do we care about these just essentially barbarians?
yeah,
These are, like,
he's like a
idiots.
idiot
He's like,
frat
look,
boy.
he's
like,
playing with a rock over there. Like, and then the Emperor's like, just look a little deeper, right? It's one of those. And then so Russ is supposed to do a whole press conference thing in front of like he doesn't want to do it, and like he didn't know how to speak Gothic, so he had to learn Gothic overnight to do this press conference that he was suddenly having to do because it's supposed to be like a big celebration. Look, we found another one. And he's trying to explain who his people are from Fenris, and he's saying things like, we are the wolves who stalk the stars, but like his like
trying to sound poetic about it.
yeah, exactly. And then the people writing it down, it just sounds like they're wolves from space. What is that, Space Wolf?
Yep.
And they've always hated that moniker. That's what they're officially called. If you were to address a Space Wolf as a Space Wolf, they would not like that.
No.
They're called. They're from,
Which sounds like a retcon.
yeah.
It sounds
well,
like somebody
it
wrote in the
is.
Horus Heresy, like, these are Space Wolves. Well, why don't we make it a joke?
That would be an example.
Well, that's
a
that's
retcon.
kind of what it was. Is that I think when you look at 40K, the Space Wolves have been kind of jokey, like this is kind of campy.
That
Nobody's taking them
started
serious.
5th edition, yeah.
And the Heresy novels were written after like the 5th edition Codex and some of this other stuff. So it does feel like they went back and totally retconned it to, okay, let's try to find a way to make this a little bit more interesting
Yeah,
and less campy feeling.
exactly. So anytime I play Wolves in 40K, I try my best to bring the old stuff that I really like, the Wolfguard Terminators or like the Blood Claws, the Sky Claws, and all that stuff. Like the stuff that was always kind of cool back in the day. I don't really bring Thunderwolf Cavalry at all.
Well, yeah, because if you look at Thunderwolf Cavalry, and one of the things actually, it's funny because it's alluded to in 30K,
And they're good
40K.
too. They're damn good. Too,
There's no wolves on Fenris.
yeah. There's no wolf.
You know what I mean? Like-
exactly. Yeah.
What's the joke? Explain that joke. There's no wolves on Fenris. Why? Why is that a thing?
Okay, so I might be getting this incorrect, but the way that 30K kind of alludes to and talks about some of this stuff is that there weren't wolves native to Fenris, and they didn't really bring wolves. If you go back to the golden age of technology for humans, when they tried to, and see if I get any of this right, when they tried to settle Fenris and other death worlds, they had tried to mix human DNA with some different animals and things like that might be better at it.
In that environment,
So essentially, these settlers that have been on the planet for thousands and thousands of years, some of them have devolved to the point that the wolf DNA is taken over. Those aren't actually wolves. They're just the descendants of the original settlers that have turned feral.
Exactly. So that's why the Thunder Wolf, the Fenrisian wolf, is technically just a person in a way. They're not really.
If you go back in the family tree long enough, you're like, oh, wait a second, this thing's got thumbs.
So that was like a common thing. So like during the Golden Age, well before the Heresy, when the humans seeded the entire galaxy, they would do that for the Death Worlds. All the Death Worlds would have they would augment the people that went to go settle it with some DNA that would help them settle that Death World, because Death Worlds are not great.
And the ones on Fenris were one of the few examples that kind of were like quasi successful in some ways.
That's why they're a lot more. They're like just really hairy. They're kind of they actually just even the human settlers of Fenris have like wolf fangs and stuff like that. Like they have.
Yeah, there's still some existence of that.
So just for context, why do they call it a death world?
Oh, so Death Worlds are miserable.
Why? What makes them miserable?
Basically, I think the concept of a death world is a planet that is able to sustain life, but it's very difficult for humans to exist there.
There is.
So it's not like
different reasons. It could be like a volcanic world or something that has huge, like if the world was covered in dinosaurs, that would be a death world.
Like
living there would be hard.
Caliban is like a weird. I think it's like giant, like mountain-sized trees with like massive monsters that live there.
We have several ecosystems here on Earth, but every planet in the 40K universe is one kind of thing.
It's like one big nasty ecosystem.
Because with terraforming
jungle,
and atmospheres, that makes sense, right?
Welcome to any sci-fi fiction, though.
Yeah, exactly.
But then the thing with there's something weird about Fenris, and I can't remember. It was something like there's a season in the year where it doesn't orbit the sun perfectly. It has like this weird it gets a little bit closer to the sun at a certain part of the year, where it like bakes the planet, and like that's the overly dangerous part of the. They have to go hide. That's why they live in the mountains in Fenris. Because they go in during that cook season. Yeah,
that's interesting, because I think of Fenris, it's just snowy all year.
It is. It's like most of the year.
Well, because year's also not necessarily how we measure it.
Correct, because they're further away from the orbit of the sun on Fenris than we are, so their year's longer than ours is. For a portion of the year, I don't even know if that's possible for a planet. To orbit closer to during its.
Yeah, every orbit technically is not perfect.
Okay,
even ours isn't.
Okay, I wasn't too sure.
Some of planets can orbit like this. So we
have a precessional wobble. Is that what you're talking about?
It's more like if you picture. If the star is here and it's orbiting like this, then you could take an equivalent size star and put it there, and that would be correct.
Oh, fair.
The wobble is when your axis is moving, not that.
Yeah,
not that. So okay, so you're talking about like
the Earth technically does that too, but it's such a minute amount that you don't notice.
So Fenris gets really close to its sun at a certain orbit, and cooks the entire planet.
And then you have like the temperate times, and then it goes very cold.
There's like a very small period of time where it's kind of pleasant. Everything melts.
Yeah, it would be spring and summer, or spring and fall.
The summer is like you can't survive on the surface. Like everyone.
That reminds me of Crematoria from Riddick.
Yeah, except that one's like every day. It has that weird,
it's got that
nonsensical,
like Terminator
Firestorm
2 day on the surface every day.
Yeah, like every day, but somehow things evolve. Even though that's like, that's a fun one.
Yeah, but
I love Riddick, and that's nonsense. Every time I watch it, and I watch him running from it, I'm just like,
it wasn't just.
It's a fun sequence.
There's a scene where he's like knocked out, and his whole like flesh is like in the sun ray,
right?
And he's not immediately cooked,
right? And he just hides really quickly.
Yeah, but that's like plot armor without armor,
right?
Yeah.
But Riddick's awesome.
He is awesome.
Let's not make fun of Riddick too much.
He's an escape artist.
Even though it doesn't make any sense. I love Riddick.
It is what it is. I showed him the Defense of the Shire once.
Oh yeah,
I was just
you can't just throw out references that nobody's going to get.
No,
watch my Lord of the Rings content.
Lord of the Rings game and use a miniature that looks like Vin Diesel. The end. There we go.
The end. There we go.
But you can't just you can't just throw out. He showed up to defend the Shire once, as if anybody's going to get that.
No, he was for a couple of people.
He was
we're making a video for the internet.
He was trying to
Let's
take
make
the
context for them.
The internet tries to figure out. Like, it should have been zero context and just like
zero context.
When do you remember?
Googling Vin Diesel in the Shire?
Right? That's a deep dive.
They'll find it. They'll find it.
Find one of our videos of Lord of the Rings.
Remember when Vin Diesel
where
did
he
a
used the
Street
miniature.
Sharks video?
That kind of looks like Vin Diesel.
Yeah.
you kind of mumbled that one.
Remember when
someone
Vin
heard
Diesel
that,
did a
Steve.
Street Sharks commercial?
Yes.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh,
Yeah, lots
right in the nostalgia.
Lots of death worlds in 40K for some reason. I guess they popped. They went to all the.
We're not even talking about the subject anymore.
What was the subject?
I totally forget the subject now. Like
It was Echoes of the Past. We're talking about how the Space Marines have changed from the edition. And now we're talking about how Vin Diesel showed up to save the Shire.
No, he tried to take the shot.
You know what? This needs to be a segment. I'm gonna propose a new segment called Telephone, where it's like the goal is that Dave has to stop whatever discussion's going on and say that thing you just said that reminds me of something else, and you just launch into a new thing and just let Luca just run with it. and you see how many times removed from the original. You ever have those conversations where you're like, how do we get here?
every conversation.
And then you backtrack, but then you backtrack, and you're like, that led to that, and you can actually backtrack it. We should have that. We should have that as a segment. Just I want to point that out because it seems that every segment seems to be that anyways. So we should have one that's purposely how far away from it. So we're gonna ask a question: how do Space Marines go pee? And then we got to see where it ends up, right?
Like, I want to know the answer to that, actually, like right now.
So, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It just cycles back to the suit, doesn't it?
If they're wearing the suit, yeah.
I think that's where.
That's it for this week's episode of Maelstrom of Lore. Be sure to check out even more in the MiniWarGaming Vault. By becoming a Vault member and watching these episodes in the Vault, you support the show and you make it so we can make even more of them. Stay tuned for more and happy wargaming.
Explain it to me in 30 seconds like I've never heard of it before ever, that I could actually understand it after 30 seconds. I'm just a normal dude in a gaming store. Oh, what's that?
Warhammer is more about us coming up with our own ideas too, right?
Yes.
So we gotta, when we answer the question, who's their biggest enemy, that's our opinion.
True.
But I would hands down say it's Tyrannus.
Oh, I would agree.
It's the orcs.
So why?
Yeah.
Next one.
Yeah.
Put it up.
Okay. Okay,
We did shuffle.
No. Not shuffle.
Is it orc again?
Yes.
But I mean, if you can deflect a blaster around, which is like should be traveling closer to the speed of light, even though I know it doesn't do that in the film, then you can put your lightsaber up in time to hit the bolter round.
Okay, so